Hey everyone, Genome here, coming at you with the very first episode of the Copper Mine. My look back at basically the Copper Age of comics when I was collecting really heavy and what I have the most issues of, and actually an era of comics I know something about. I'll go over, some key comics of the time, just some favorites of mine from the collection, and of course interspersed with rambling stories that I'm want to do. About my experiences in comic stores and then vice versa back during my collecting heyday. For those of you who maybe haven't seen my other videos, I collected really heavily between about 88 and 92 or 3 when kind of, the wheels fell off the industry a little bit and I kind of got out and stayed out. But, interest is once again resurged, especially with all the great content creators out there that I've discovered. And it kind of, rekindles the fire to want to talk about these things again and maybe show off a little bit. But, I can't really say show off. Nothing I have is all that valuable. But, to me it has sentimental value. So while you won't get too much for that kind of value at the shop and trade in, it'll suffice for video, right? So the book that I decided to kind of kick off the series with was, in case you hadn't noticed this thing right here, but it kind of epitomizes the 90s, so much so that it even says it on the cover. Where was it at here? Heroes for the 90s. Look at that. I'll get you a close-up over here now. That's right, folks. Heroes from the 90s, the New Warriors. New... Look at that team up, huh? Not bad. Also, fantastic first issue. Not to be confused with anyone else with Fantastic, right? But put that back there for now. But there it is. That's one of the several variant covers that were there for it. This is, I think, the least expensive one at the time, the gold. As I recall, it came in red, too, and green, possibly. I have to look it up. It's been a while. But I think this was the cheaper of the ones that were released. But anyway, getting past all that. So we have a team comprised up of basically nobodies. Some of these other ones had some small appearances and other things. Nova's probably the most notable one of this bunch before the books. You got Namorita, which is Namor's sister, Firestar, who's just generic Sunfire, American Sunfire female. I don't know what she's supposed to be. She's just another fire character, right? Speedball, which is probably the most interesting in the group. He's really the most annoying. He's like I think he's like, if I recall right, he's surrounded by a dimensional field. It's really weird. It's but it's all kinetic energy. So he bounces around off stuff, and he's pretty much invulnerable when he's bouncing off things. But it's not the most controllable of powers. It's an odd duck, but it's interesting. Something different, right? You got Major Vance Astro, otherwise known as Marvel Boy in this iteration, and he's really kind of annoying in this. He's like the, not even an angsty teen. Night Thrasher's more of the angsty teen. Marvel Boy's just more of the emo teen, I guess. He's kind of always woe is me, and why can't I be old like I am in the future when I'm actually on a good team and all that? But, what are you going to do? It's neither here nor there. And then finally, you're led off with Night Thrasher. Night Thrasher being their leader of sorts. And he doesn't really have any powers at all. He just has money, a drive for vengeance, and, a cybernetic suit a little bit. So he's basically just a human brawler. But he's the metaphorical gel that holds this whole team together. And he kind of gets everyone together. After reading it, it had been so long since I read this one, I've forgotten that Namorita and Speedball were accidental additions to the team. He actually only wanted to be 4 members. He only wanted to be him, Nova, Marvel Boy, and Firestar. But they were fighting villain Terrax, actually, in the book, or at least like a shadow of him, and the other 2 were just on the scene before they were. So hey, at the end, when they are brushed off by everybody, in kind of a funny ending, they decide to join up and become the team. So let's talk a little bit about this book. The issue was written by Fabian Nicieza, and the art was by Mark Bagley. So they brought a heavy hitter in to get the #1 going, and that's they knew what they were doing back then. They knew how to move product, right? They put first issue on things, they put a big artist on it, and then it's just going to move 500,000 units at least, on a bad run. The actual team was created by Tom DeFalco and Ron Frenz. So, yeah, you got some creative powerhouses behind that. So, we'll talk a little bit about what's inside the book here. I made actually a couple notes here that I thought were interesting after reading through it. Oh, you'll see behind me some other stuff that has to do with the New Warriors, but I'll get to that in a minute. Let's see. I think the first one, if you have the book, feel free to read along. Sounds like color by numbers, isn't it? Page 3, I found this was really kind of funny, a little quirk. First off, spoiler alert, if you plan on reading it, never read it before, I won't give away too much. I won't, give away the whole book or whatever, but there's going to be a couple spoilers in here. I love the very first page of this book. Is awesome. It's got Night Thrasher holding a guy who we find out is Nova over the ledge. And basically what's going on is Nova, he had lost his powers and they were kind of buried deep within him, according to Reed Richards, and didn't have very much of a chance of resurgence. So Night Thrasher, in his infinite wisdom, figured the best way to prompt those that said resurgence was to threaten his life. So he drops them off the building in the next panel, which is pretty brutal. And he's like, I didn't even know it was going to work. So there he goes. Oh, sorry, wrong side. It's hard to do it this reversed. But basically he drops him. He gets his power back. Yay. But what I really find funny about this one is, hopefully it'll come through. It's hard to see. But if you look really closely, this dude right here in the yellow shirt, I tilted. It'll focus, but I'm going to make y'all dizzy. He's wearing a Batman shirt. So it's a nice little nod right there. They kind of stuck in there. You didn't see Marvel doing that too often, so it's just a nice little aside. Basically, the beginning just starts with each of the members, trying to find their way. Night Thrasher is collecting people through strange ways, like he blackmails one of them, tries blackmailing Firestar, and tries to kill Nova. I think he just hacks into the old Avengers database to get a hold of Marvel Boy. And as far as I think that was all the ones that he tried to. So those three he tried to kind of waylay into being his group. But anyway, I'm getting a little off track here. But yeah, like Marvel Boys want to try out for the Avengers, but they won't talk to him because he's too young. He's a kid, and he gets overwhelmed right there at the very base defenses. He tries to get past, and Captain America kind of laughs it off. It's like, oh, little kid, what are you doing here? Just move on until you get older, because Cap knows who he is in the future. Somehow I forget how it ties in, but so yeah, they're all just real young. That's the theme, the overall theme of the New Warriors, and they were definitely going for the youth market here. You can tell by some of the lingo they use and some of their more angsty moments. Let's see. There's another funny reference that almost no one will get. It was on page 8. Let's see if I can find the panel for you here. I don't think you'll be able to see it. It's just a piece of dialogue. Yeah, this panel here, where Nova's talking to Cord. Cord is Night Thrasher's trainer and mentor, kind of him and another lady, Chinese lady. He calls this Nova calls this Cord guy. Did Rosie Greer over there think Confucius? Sorry, let me try it again. This is kind of a non-PC panel, but so like he said, like, wonderful. Did Rosie Greer over here take Confucius to get fortune cookies, or does she always talk like that? But what's funny about this panel, he mentions Rosie Greer. Now, I don't know if y'all know who he is, but Rosie Greer was an ex-football player back in the 70s, and he wasn't really famous for that. He was actually famous for his hobby. Actually, he's famous for two things. He was famous for his hobby, which is macrame and needlepoint. So here you have this enormous, like, 280-pound guy, right? And he's sitting there doing crochet and stuff and macrame. But, this is back in the early 80s and all that. So, yeah, he was known for that. And the other thing he was known for was pushing Reagan into the car after he got shot. He was one of the Secret Service agents tasked with protecting Reagan. And, of course, the shot did get through. Oh, I'm sorry. He wasn't the one pushing the car. He was the one that jumped on top of the shooter. Is what happened, and he didn't hurt him. It was kind of interesting. He was doing a press release after, Reagan was shot and in the hospital and that, and people were asking, I think, why didn't he try to kill the guy or whatever? And Rosie Greer's like, well, someone's already might be dying today. I didn't need to add to that number. So it's kind of a interesting reflection. You can tell the kind of gentle soul of the man, which didn't really fit the physique that he had, of course, and the demeanor he had to have on the football field. But so I just thought it was really interesting that they put this in a book that was more aimed toward the younger demographic, because no one's gonna know who they're talking about except for the guy who wrote it, But and of course dorks like me. But so what else was interesting? Poor Speedball in the panel, like I think it's on page 11 or whatever. He's stuck going TV shopping in the city with his mom. So here you have this teenage kid who's stuck out there with mom. Isn't this just horrible? And he doesn't want to ride the subway with her, but she makes him anyway. So, what else was interesting? I mean, Speedball has another funny panel too, where he's seeing some of the new Warriors fight on TV. He's the last one to join the fray against Terax, and that's when he decides to leave to go help. And he's like looking at the action on screen. He's like, "Wow, man, superheroes like that always get the babes." Oh man, that's some classic stuff there. But so yeah, that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. They have their first trial by fire, and they kind of get really blown off at the end. They defeat Terax, the bad guy, through teamwork and dedication. And then when it's all said and done, the Avengers show up. It's like, we'll take it from here. And Cap kind of bursts them off again. And he's there with Quasar and somebody else. And the press goes running over to talk to the Avengers like they did all the work. And so everyone on the new Warriors kind of decides like, we don't need the Avengers. A lot of them wanted to join the Avengers. We'll just join our own team, or form our own team. And thus, let's see how they actually wrote it in the panel. I think history was more. Let's see. In the beginning of a legend. Well, I'm not sure how legendary the New Warriors were, but, they had their place in the 90s. I'm missing a book here. Where did it go? I'll be right back. Sorry about that. I had to go find the other book. I had set it aside, and then I forgot to bring it over here with me. But A for prep. But like I said, they had their place in the 90s. Basically, when they came out, they had, I don't know, almost what you could call a capstone year. They released 5 new big books, which I don't think any of them actually made it in the end for too terribly long. But let's see, they did the New Warriors, Nomad, Fool Killer. Who else did they do? Deathlock. Who am I forgetting? I just had it. Anyway, it'll come to me. But Guardians of the Galaxy. That was the other big one. So all in one year, all these big new books released, and they're mostly new characters. Deathlock had been around before, but so that was Marvel's kind of push into the 90s youth market, because a lot of these teams were a little bit younger. But, they were okay. I knew Warriors was an okay team. I liked them more when I was younger. I don't know if I'd read them much nowadays, because some of their stuff is pretty cringy to read. Maybe they got better in later issues after I quit collecting. But I do remember this one. This was a really cool one, because they teamed up with the Punisher. Not really teamed up, really, but the Punisher kind of bowled him over. So he takes some regular human guy, and he's whipping up on some of the New Warriors, especially Night Thrasher. And he needs Night Thrasher oil and water, even though they're almost basically the same person. I don't think Night Thrasher was quite as brutal, but so yeah, they had some good fights and some decent teams. Some interesting team makeup. Their dynamics were okay. So most of the time they were drawn really well, so they had that much going for them. But just a stereotypical 90s experiment that they did with the youth market. And they achieved that with varying success from time to time. Well, anyway, so that's the New Warriors #1. These behind me, I was told you I was going to get back to them. These are technically the first appearances of the New Warriors. These were in Thor 411 and 412. They had just a very, very small appearance in this book. They were basically in the last panel. They showed up. Basically, Thor is getting the holy hell whipped about him by Juggernaut, as befits Juggernaut Station. And then the New Warriors show up to help distract him, But this is really the first good appearance of the New Warriors. They're even on graced the cover. And much like most superhero team-ups, they're all trying to do things individually for a while against Juggernaut. Nothing's working, of course, because he's Juggernaut. So finally they realize they have to work together. So at some point they do work together. Someone slowed him down to let Thor kind of regain his composure and to help thwart the massive evil entity that was Juggernaut. So there you have it. Just a quick look back at one of the the Marvel expansionist ideas that they had back then. Just put it in print and they will buy. So and they sold out. They sold for a while. But yep. So the New Warriors, like I said, they are basically everything that was 90s wrapped up in a nutshell, at least for early 90s for Marvel. And they're worth a look. I mean, they won't be replacing the X-Men or the Avengers anytime soon in the upper pantheon of superhero team-ups, but they weren't too bad. Like I said, take them for what they were. Don't expect any deep or way too meaningful conversations. Even though Night Thrasher could be interesting, because Night Thrasher was a lot like Spider-Man in a way. His parents were killed by bad guys, so yeah, he has a little bit of a darker backstory. And he's actually, one more thing, I'm sorry I'm dragging this on, but some other issues, because a lot of times these guys would appear in other publications. They kind of they were like journeyman heroes, but Night Thrasher shows up in another issue. I think it was Round Robin of Spider-Man, the big 6-part superhero mashup. That was a really, really, really good series. I'll do that one later. And he kind of, also fight against Juggernaut, he kind of loses it from time to time. He's not compos mentis completely, he's a little bit fragile in the psyche. And he is basically just bent on vengeance at the expense of all else, and he just loses cool. Taking his more violent counterpart, the Punisher. The Punisher is generally rage-filled, but you can tell that he's a smoldering rage-filled. He's dead-faced, dead-eyed. Doesn't seem to care too much one way or the other what happens. But, Night Thrasher, he just flips out from time to time and just loses it. I mean, he goes out and attacks like the Juggernaut with his fists. that's how ignoramus he can be when he gets enraged, So he's definitely a flawed leader and character, which is refreshing to see actually in a comic book. So anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you want to see more content like this, just let me know down in the comments. And I'm going to try to get you an intro. I had a special intro ordered for this, and that all fell through. So I'm working on another one. So in the meantime, just have my generic intro and enjoy the primitive technology that I work with. So anyway, take care. Until next time, this is Genome singing the New Warriors out. New